Well, welcome to Montana Voices Podcast, episode 46, I believe. Or I think we're going to skip 46 and just call it Goodbye 45 for obvious reasons.
Oh, you had to, didn't you?
I sure did. It's a...
The votes haven't been counted yet. It's not even January 6th. What is wrong with you, sir? What kind of heresy are you even starting the show out
They've
with?
not been certified. You are correct, but with I believe that Joe Biden is our president-elect.
It's very much in all reality, it's starting to look that way there. Unless Pence literally comes in and pulls a literal John Cena. It's all but in the books right now.
By God, it's Mike Pence with a folding chair.
Yeah, that's basically what it would. Could you imagine though on the 6th, when he's out there counting the votes and he just pulls something out of the whole, just out of left field? I mean, just the memes about it would be insane. You know, they always had that WWE gif of a wrestler just running down the mat with a metal folding chair, just running up to the ring, hitting somebody with it. That would be Pence.
It's Bernie Sanders with the folding metal chair, by the way. The original meme there.
Was it Bernie Sanders?
It sure was.
Okay.
No other. The guy that is currently filibustering, trying to get you an additional $1,200 per person in your household.
An additional, what, on top of the 2,000?
No, it's the 600 is a for sure deal. That's in the bank, or will be in the bank soon. But he wants it to be 2,000 per person. And I haven't read the bill for some reason. I've been looking for it on the Congress.gov website. I'll do a quick plug for montana.leg.gov, whatever, where you can look up every bill and who's behind it and who's dissenting on it and which committees that are in there, et cetera. But we have the same thing on the national level. And for whatever reason, the text of the bill for the $2,000 thing is not available at this time.
Can I just point out one thing really quick, though?
Go on. I immediately got us distracted. Go ahead and do it.
Your math is wrong. Your math is wrong. He's not fighting for $1,200. He's fighting for $14.
Oh, well, he's a good socialist.
Sorry, I completely derailed your opening there, and I apologize only tongue-in-cheek there, so please go on.
Well, we're 3 minutes in, so we might as well tell people who we are and what we're doing. This is Montana Voices Podcast, episode 46, or Goodbye 45. We are once again blessed with the presence of Full Mana. Do I get your moniker wrong every time?
Manaonline. Yeah, you can just call me Chris, otherwise I masquerade as the person behind twitch.tv/Manaonline. And also on YouTube at youtube.com/c/fullmanagaming.
And we could totally put these links in our description or whatever that people can click, and maybe we will. Yeah, some of the links, and I won't mess it up this time. So I forgot to even name you the first episode, I think.
Yeah, you did. You probably didn't, but I mean, I can't prove it right now. But since you're willing to offer yourself up on that pike, I mean, I'm just gonna hang you on it. That's all I'm gonna do.
Well, I don't think I did. Well, I usually call you by a kind of bastardization of your last name. It's personal. So
just a little bit.
Since we're
a little bit of one.
Yeah, so we're on a first name basis, Chris or Manaonline. Welcome back to the cast by popular demand again.
Always a pleasure to be on the show here.
In fact,
always.
You know, when something a show is struggling, they bring on an interesting like female character to spice things up or whatever. And we've tried that, but we've gotten more reviews out of you than we have the ladies.
I thought you were about. I was just going to make a comment, sir. Are you identifying? Are you misgendering me, good sir? Are you asking me to be a certain gender that I may or may not actually identify as?
I will just call you Mana until you decide.
You know what? That's absolutely fair. Okay, go on. Continue.
Well, you were probably listening to this on your podcast app of choice, everything but Spotify and Twitch. We're on Twitch, but we'll get to Twitch in a moment here.
Yes, we will.
Google Podcasts, of course, on Apple Podcast. You could be listening on YouTube, where we have the highest quality B-roll of Montana. I think it's going to be trains through an open field, a prairie. There's this prairie in the mountains. There's some train tracks run through it. I think that'll be our B-roll, I believe. Finest B-roll you can find. Now, what else am I missing? Of course, we are Montana Voices at gmail.com. We are on Twitter, at Montana Voices. We're on Facebook. If you Google Montana Voices Podcast, we are the first link that comes up. So, welcome back. Wow. Let's get right into your business here.
My business.
Well, I'm kind of bringing you on. We have Montana related things, and we will get into those. The internet is ablaze, literally.
Oh my god, dude, the internet is right now just one massive trash fire right now of memes on one side and just complete degeneracy on the other. It's absolutely insane right now.
Now, I don't live in this space, so to speak, since I'm not an online gamer of any sorts, really.
Like I said, it's you don't even necessarily need to be an online gamer anymore, because a lot more people here, especially in places like Montana or other remote areas, are starting to get a lot more of their entertainment from online sources like YouTube and Twitch. I don't have the stats right in front of me here, but we're starting to see a major shift in people's viewing habits. They are not watching traditional terrestrial programming much anymore, and they're either going for a la carte services like CBS or HBO, or they're going to go for user-driven content like what's on YouTube and Twitch right now.
You're absolutely right. The articles will state the millennials are killing cable television and everything that's good about America.
Yeah, I'm not, I used to be of the opinion that a la carte was kind of a good thing, because, we always like the idea of more consumer choice and all the thing. But I think in the back of my mind, I always wondered, just how much would it cost to actually have a true a la carte style program? Most content creators, if you want the non-free content, there are a lot of content creators that I watch that actually have they do like extra podcasts, or they'll do Q&A, interactive Q&A and stuff like that from people who pay them who go through Patreon or something like that and pay them like $5 a month. So you're essentially paying for that additional content. And now that services like HBO and CBS have glommed on to like the Netflix model, they're starting to charge like $15-20 a month for that kind of stuff. So now people can pay $200 a month like they used to be paying with cable bills, and maybe get an eighth of what they used to get on cable TV. But the other argument is now you're actually paying for content that you want to watch. I'm not sure. If it was just YouTube and Twitch creators that were doing this, I would probably be a little bit more okay with it there. But I worry that the big media companies now have really glommed onto like what Netflix has done, and like, we're going to do this and we're going to make more money than we ever made off of companies like Comcast or anything like that.
Oh, we'll get to Comcast in a second. Luckily, they're not in Montana yet.
God, I'm segueing all over the place here.
So,
I'm just setting you up here.
Something about the not the Twitters, the Twitches. Oh, and yeah. Montana Voices podcast does have a Twitch account, and I think Bryce has played Far Cry on there once.
Go, Bryce. We love you, man.
We did a cast while he played Far Cry, and we streamed it to Twitch, just for our own entertainment, not to make that our platform or anything. But it's something about Twitch and bans and how they're handling Twitch. Of course, an Amazon company now, worth noting.
Right. People who've not listened when the last few times I've been on, Twitch.tv is a website where people can stream content like video games. Now, even because Twitch is owned by Amazon, they have access to Amazon movies, so you can actually have watch parties on there. Technically, you wouldn't be streaming the movie, but anybody who has like an Amazon Prime membership can watch a video alongside a content creator. You could have interactivity right there as you all are watching the same content. So like some of the creators that I've been watching have been going through like the back catalog of like Star Trek: The Next Generation and stuff like that on there. It's actually kind of neat. It's a really interesting way of getting people to interact. With Twitch, though, there is definitely some very downsides. There's some very big downsides. Because it's user-driven content, it's very important that adults and parents really got to watch what's on Twitch, because it literally can change from one broadcaster to another. One of the first articles, I sent this to you. This will make sense.
This channel's called Misbehavin', so I'm assuming I assume it's pushing the limits there.
Yes, doing the stuff that gets the attention, and more importantly, the money of some very lonely people out there in the world,
of which there are a lot of right now for a number of reasons.
Yes, there are. And to set this up, I'm going to describe to you a recent thing that happened with a streamer named Misbehavin'. exactly what you think.
Now, is the goal to get them to go to their, because you can't do actual illicit stuff on Twitch, right?
You are not supposed to.
So is the goal to get them to go to your other site or whatever?
You are not supposed to stream pornography and stuff like that. So the idea is that these streamers in particular leverage their extremely good looks. In this case, what this particular streamer was doing, this article kind of sums it up right here. This female Twitch streamer, Misbehaving, who bared her private parts live in front of the cam, only got a 3-day ban from Twitch. She bared her private parts because she thought she was recording it for her OnlyFans. And Twitch, with Twitch, Misbehaving is a member of their partner program where they get better what are called CPMs for their greater rev share of subscriptions and stuff like that. Even though she pretty explicitly broke the rules on Twitch, right now you got kids sitting at home just browsing through. They're watching Ninja or whoever, and then all of a sudden they might accidentally click on Misbehaving, and all of a sudden now you're explaining the birds and the bees to them, or why is this lady doing that on the screen?
There's money to be made, so it seems like a simple question.
People like her make a lot of money. I can't give figures because they're obviously these ladies and even their management companies are very reluctant to release just how much they're making, because then it's going to increase their competition. It's going to bring additional scrutiny on the whole thing. Basically they're kind of running a racket, if you know what I mean.
And the last thing we need is the IRS looking into how much money's being made here.
Where some people who were against these streamers were encouraging everybody on the internet to report them to the IRS and stuff like that. Oh God, we need to talk about that degeneracy later. But the point that I was making here is that technically doing what she did would have like 99.9% certain earned a lifetime ban to anybody else doing it, especially like any guys that did that, for sure. Any male streamer that would have done that would have earned a lifetime ban, and he would have absolutely deserved it, right? Instead, she gets a 3-day ban and still remains in the partner program. There was that going on. Well, then following not so long after that, there was a ban was handed out to another streamer called Tehuhu. Now she is a streamer for a game called Valorant. She is female. She is a single mom. And the reason why that is important is because she is not one of these thought streamers. She's just literally a girl gamer. She's actually picked up by one of the larger e-gaming orgs, INTZ, over in where she lives, an up-and-coming, essentially professional gamer. What happened is that she ordered dinner for her and her daughter, because again, she's a single mom. Keep that in mind. And she, goes AFK, as they call it, and goes to go get the order. Her little girl sneaks into her room. She had no idea what was going on, and the little girl just gets up in the chair. You can see her on camera, and she just starts interacting with the chat. She just starts talking with the chat.
So, what's the problem here?
Twitch banned her for life. Because
against the rules,
because her kid was on stream without an adult present. I kid you not. Lifetime ban.
Well, I'm hesitant to speak ill on our corporate overlords. I mean, I'm sure Bezos is in this personally.
Where Twitch only banned Misbehaving for 3 days and kept her as part of the partner program. She's still getting the preferred ad rates and everything like that. And then they just banned this gal because again, she left the door open and the kid just came in.
How do we only have one choice in this? I mean, if it was Twitch that was doing something wrong in banning or not banning somebody, our dollar votes or view votes should have a say to take us. Well, I'm going to go to whatever other streaming platform. What's the other one? YouTube gaming, Facebook does a thing, and.
With the folding of Mixer, which was a Microsoft-sponsored project, there really is no other major streaming platform. Facebook is trying to basically become the Twitch competitor with their Facebook gaming, and they potentially have a chance to do that which one of the big draws of these platforms like Twitch and Facebook gaming and everything like that is that you as the viewer have the opportunity to interact and talk with the creator while they're doing the performance on the screen. Watch things happen as they unfold, because it's unscripted. This isn't like corporate produced. This is just literally people just sitting back playing a video game, vibing and chilling, and talking with people in chat.
Well, so maybe we should be doing that.
Well, the thing is that, like I said, or to get back to the point I was making, Mixer folded, and they basically got out of the game. Microsoft was like, it's really hard to get people to move away from something they already know and use, right? Happens anywhere in the world. You want to get people away from Walmart, how are you going to do that?
But you should.
Yeah.
I will argue that. We do not shop at Walmart in this house.
You're right. And so again, that's the same problem that Mixer had, is that everybody was already used on Twitch, and so they never really adopted Mixer. It was already kind of late in the game, and none of the creators that people really, because like Mixer had big names like Ninja, like Ninja over there, but you got to have also the B and C roster streamers. You got to have a wide variety of them, because Ninja can't be on there all the time. And even when Ninja was on there, I think he was only getting about 10 to 15% of the audience that he was getting on Twitch. And of course, Twitch now has the backing of Jeff Bezos' Amazon, so they can pretty much do whatever they want, and they can make decisions like they had here for banning Tehihi, or I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing her. Tehuhu. God, why was I thinking Tehihi?
I don't know. So, this is the first time I've heard of either of these names.
Tehuhu.
Get it right. So she's back on the Twitch, right?
She is. Yeah, she is back. And it was great, because the first day that she was back, she came back on stream. Tehuhu came back on stream, and her daughter was with her. I was just like, I could think of no better finger to Twitch than to do that. That's so great.
So let's get something about Comcast.
Yeah, the next thing that I don't think a lot of people are prepared for, but Comcast has announced, and this article that I have here is dated Christmas Day, but I know that it was announced, I believe, back in November. Comcast as a whole will cap all home internet data starting the first week of January, and they're going to cap it at 1.2 terabytes. If you exceed 1.2 terabytes worth of data traffic, they are going to start billing you overages on that. The issue that a lot of people don't realize is that data is going to get eaten up pretty freaking quick. Now, say users who go over the cap will be charged $10 for every 50 gigabytes. So to put this in perspective here, 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. So they're going to be billing you $10 for every 50 gigabyte of data consumed over the initial limit. Although they promise monthly that those charges will never exceed $100. They promise.
Ever.
Comcast back in March temporarily suspended its data cap threshold due to the coronavirus pandemic. So, I mean, that's another factor in this too. Here is that they could. The big problem with a lot of these with Comcast and them is that they are basically the dominant player in the for entire metropolises or maybe even entire states.
Well, to the point I made earlier, if there was a choice, if there was a reasonable competitor for those, but there is not, Elon will be sending you our internet dollars soon.
When we talk about reasonable internet competitors here, we're not talking about, like CenturyLink, which could potentially provide you with DSL service in the single megs up and down. We're talking about being able to do multiple. We're talking about even just 2-digit up and down on your home internet, because that's what a lot of streaming services use.
The USDA considers actual broadband to be 25 by 5. Which I don't get.
To me,
here.
that should be
but I live in a shack in Montana, so
yeah, that's a bare minimum for today. I say it's a bare minimum for people who kind of subsist off the internet, right there. But in reality, it should be a little bit higher here, according to Comcast. The new data cap will only come into play for an estimated 5% of its subscribers. But then that begs the question: why are you even doing this? If this is only going to affect 5% of the people that are doing this, and even then those 5% of the people are spread out in different markets, right? Why is this such a problem? if this goes through without any kind of significant challenge, I feel like two things are going to happen. As more and more things are delivered online, because like your video games now come online, you can't really buy physical copies of them anymore. You can't go watch movies online anymore. Offline anymore in movie theaters. You got to get the new releases online. Everything that you do is now online. So now you're going to be paying X amount of bucks a month for internet. You're going to be paying. Eventually, that data cap is going to come down. They're just starting at a really high number of 1.2 terabyte, but I don't think that's where they want it at. I bet you anything they probably want it in the sub terabyte region. They want it
Absolutely.
in the hundreds of gigs.
Well, that's my bet. Will be coming to Montana right now. Choptimum, who's your internet provider over there?
Spectrum,
formerly Same Charter, thing. Formerly Bresnan. Cable companies,
formerly AT&T.
Formerly AT&T, but cable companies change hands left and right. And it's sort of contrasting because cable companies were once the sort of the great equalizer, breaking into markets that were previously just completely dominated by your big AT&T and Ma Bell, and they were sort of the rebel rousers who had to basically assert their rights legally because the first cable channels were simply recasts of public of over-the-air television.
Yep. Over-the-air television. Yep.
Yeah, so they had to assert their rights to do that. They had to assert their rights to be able to lay infrastructure on utility poles. But now it's quite the opposite. Now they are the Ma Bell.
They have become the thing that they hate, as in a manner of speaking. But the second thing to watch out for is wait until it's reported just how much more money Comcast is making from this, and I guarantee you, Spectrum will do it next. I guarantee
if they don't sell
to
Comcast next year.
I don't think that will go through, or at least it won't go through entirely. They'll probably be forced to sell certain markets, which will just start the whole chain over again. They'll spin them off, and then a year or two later, they'll get bought right back up.
We really went off on a tangent. When I said the internet is on fire, I was referring to literally on fire with not Montana events, but AT&T being blown up. But let's get back to Montana.
Well, I mean, don't you know, Jimmy? It was a missile. Come on, it was a missile, man.
A missile. I heard it had something to do with voting machines for some reason.
Oh yeah. I completely forgot.
I'm not fueling those flames. I haven't even looked into it. It sounds ridiculous. I also heard Taylor Swift's behind it.
Yeah. So, but to wrap up this point here is that this I feel is a very anti-consumer thing. To me personally, has always been in the back of my mind as Spectrum has been rolling out faster and faster internet speeds. Like they want to now offer you they're getting everybody hooked on like 1 gig speeds and stuff like that. Had a view inside the cable industry. I've always thought to myself, why the big push to get all this out very quickly? And to me, maybe this is just me being cynical, but I truly believe that the whole idea behind getting 1 gig speeds out there was eventually to turn around and make it so that way you burn through your data cap really, really fast.
Well, not only are you right, but there is a company in Montana, in eastern Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota that currently does that. They give you a wide open pipe as fast as they can get it to you, and they charge you by the gigabyte. This
to me is just absolute highway robbery. Now, the argument against it would be that at the ISP level, they have to pay by the ISPs are not given wide open pipes by their tier ones and stuff like that. And so the argument that was put to me was, well, why should we as the ISP have to pay for the person who's torrenting off of our network and sailing the 7 seas?
Well, you're right, but there's no competition in this. And bring it back into Montana, Current Guy Tester is a big proponent of funding broadband and those USDA grants. But the argument that I've made in the past is that it doesn't fuel competition to do that. Only your incumbents and only your companies that are big enough to have a grant response team are the folks getting those. These small companies that are just putting fiber in the ground or are running wireless are not equipped to get those grants, and therefore you're paying for their demise with our tax dollars, by the way.
I don't know the full specifics of that one. Is that the idea that we're essentially the state would fund to have like Meet Me locations?
Not the Meet Me locations. I'm talking about the CAF dollars. That's CAF. I forget what it stands for, but it's USDA money that is given to ISPs, or they apply for it to serve underserved areas that they're in.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
where they come
So,
into
like,
that.
bring like fiber out to the rural areas and stuff like that.
Not necessarily fiber, but anything 25 by 5 is what they consider broadband. For serving underserved areas, you can get a grant allotment, and that's building a lot of the fiber around the state at the moment. But of course, it's USDA dollars. But the point I made earlier is it doesn't foster competition at all. It's our big Lex that are getting that money. It's your Spectrum's getting that money, certainly, and other
Yes.
Your CenturyLink absolutely is. Your competition is none. I mean, what options do you what viable options do you have? You have Charter right now. Is there any other option that would offer you the same service?
The rates that they want to sell me, probably not. I know that CenturyLink, or what is it, Lucent now, whatever the heck they call themselves.
It's hard to keep up with.
I just know that they changed their name because they wanted to completely move away from that whole Quest CenturyLink thing, because the name is completely trashed right now. So they just want to. They're like, "Hey, I'm just changing my name and moving to a new state." You know.
Oh, speaking of which, in the our current budget that was just approved, $600 checks coming your way. Big grant money going to Tesla/Starlink to serve the underserved areas. Despite it being satellite and there's no additional cost for them to serve these underserved areas. So they're on the government teat as well. Your tax dollars are buying Elon Musk something. I don't know, what else could he possibly need?
Yeah, okay. Actually, you want to know something really cool? It's funny you bring that up. I didn't put this on the doc, so I'm sorry. I'm gonna blindside you with this one. You're gonna love this though.
All right.
Here's the headline from Politico. Senators want the public to see the government's UFO reports. Have you heard about this one?
Oh, I'm all for that.
Okay. It says, quote unquote, here's the lead paragraph. The Senate Intelligence Committee has voted to require the U.S. intelligence agencies and the Defense Department to compile a detailed public analysis of all data collected on unidentified aerial phenomenon, including intrusions recorded by Navy pilots in recent years. The provision contained in the annual intelligence authorization bill, which still needs to be adopted by the full Senate, sets up an unusually public debate on Capitol Hill about how extensively the government has been tracking high-performance aircraft of unknown origins, or UFOs.
It's not the Russians
basically,
this time.
somebody in that big old omnibus bill, you know, some cheeky person snuck in a couple lines in there that basically says in 6 months the government would have to disclose basically what they know about UFOs.
I am all for it. It is about time. We are not alone. George Norrie killed Coast to Coast AM. Long live Art Bell.
No kidding, right?
I need to pick up smoking so I can get that Art Bell voice for radio.
Oh, right, man. He just had that radio voice that nobody else will ever have again.
Well, you chain smoke for 60 years, and that's how you can get it. I'm starting late.
Yeah, along with cancer. I want to kind of avoid that.
Well, let's look at stuff we didn't talk about in the last cast. Something about bikes in the airport. Nobody cares about bikes. It's Missoula. There's bikes everywhere.
Right.
That's the Missoula airport. Missoula is relocating Tent City. They're no longer going to be on the river, or they've already actually done the move. So this is old news. Some movie stuff's happening in Great Falls. No one cares. And, Butte wants to be able to tax residents fixing that highway, that interstate. You should never stop working on yourself, just like the highway to Butte.
Wait.
Yes, street maintenance fees. They're looking.
This one.
That's who will build the roads.
Okay, I see here from them.
So they are currently charging $87.71 for a flat rate for properties, but now want to have it under assessment. So it could be more for apartments and larger businesses. I can't believe they're already $87 a year for road maintenance in Butte.
Paragraphs in here say a pending ordinance change this week could give commissioners a new option for assessing street maintenance fees on residents and businesses in Butte Silverbow. And if they choose the new method of raising more than $1.5 million in revenue for annual road maintenance next year, it'd be the second major change in just 3 years. The first change in 2018 was deemed far fairer than the previous manner, and some commissioners and county officials say a per unit. Yeah, instead of each parcel being charged an annual flat rate currently at $87.71, the fee would be assessed on each residential living unit, meaning each house in an individual apartment, and on businesses and tax-exempt entities such as churches.
Now, is Cascade County charging for road maintenance on city taxes? I didn't think they were. I thought they were just getting the regular Montana gas rebate.
That's a very good question that I should probably look at.
Have not looked at your tax bill, have you?
This seems kind of Okay, I think I know the reason why they would say that is because Butte already. If we're talking about the roads here in Butte itself, there's just not a lot of places to park. Anyways, Butte wasn't built to have the roads that we have right now. It was a mining town. With all the vehicle traffic that they have out there, the roads are not that great. And in theory, they're going to look at like what are you doing with your property and try to bill you accordingly essentially to try and raise money to. I'm guessing
how is
fix
that
the
not
roads here
covered
is what
under
they're-
regular Montana taxes? Because the Montana fuel tax, I think Missoula County, I could be wrong on this, but Missoula County has its own. We recently voted on this, added 2 cents onto our gas tax for in Missoula for road maintenance.
Right.
But I think we are the outlier, as in maybe the only county that has it. I could be wrong. I haven't researched that, but I know in Cascade
Right.
County it's only state taxes, and in most other counties it's only state taxes, and that money goes to the state to build highways, and then some of that money comes back to build local roads. So
Right.
I'm just not sure why the Butte road maintenance needs are greater than anywhere else besides Missoula, because we're special.
I guess the problem I have with this is that Butte really doesn't have a lot going for it right now. Just from
they got the lady on the mountain?
I'm coming at this from an
They have pork chops.
yeah. Well, I mean, yes, they have the pork chop. They have the pork chop shop there, dude. And believe me, I'm pretty sure that place is like carrying the whole freaking town.
Pork chop John's is carrying the town.
I believe it, dude. 100%.
I don't know about that. There's New Butte and Old Butte, and if you look at the New Butte, it's almost a suburb of Butte. It's beautiful new houses that are all up to code. It is a super fun site still, but they are pumping water out of the pit, so they got that going for them. They had some mines are running in limited capacity right now. Certainly, it's a shadow of its former self, but there is mining still happening in Butte. There's some business in Butte. Right, and there's those nice federal government dollars that are coming in to clean up abatement. And of course, that brings people in and brings money in. Mm-hmm. We can't talk bad about Butte. There's nothing more Montanan than Butte. Butte gave it all. We wouldn't have won the war without Butte.
They gave it all, and now in exchange they became a Superfund site.
Yeah, now there's lead in the air.
Yeah, there's lead in the air, and the pipes are still wooden underneath the streets.
Well, that's better than lead pipes.
I guess
I don't think they have.
It's all a matter how you choose how you want to die.
Their I don't think you have to boil the water in Butte anymore.
You don't think?
I haven't been there for a while, but it's still the running joke about. That's a lie. I was there recently. I was there last week. I had a taco at El Taco. It's just called The Taco. Pork Chop John's was closed. Rosé's, I think it is, a little burger joint. Kind of reminds me of Arctic Circle. I think it was an Arctic Circle at one point. Was only doing drive-through, and I had a long drive and wanted to sit, not be in the truck for a minute. And eating in your truck's never good. But
no,
had an El Taco, a taco made with pace picante sauce, I believe. It's worth going to Butte just for that Pork Chop John's. And if you can get it at the tavern, there's Pork Chop John's, but if you want a real pork chop, you got to go to I think it's the Freeway Tavern. They only accept cash, and they are super weird. No, I went there. This was last.
Of course you went there.
Of course I did. This was quite
They're
some
weird
time.
and they only accept cash. Please tell me they at least spoke English.
Oh, it's a Butte English. So this, I was working and coming through, and so it's about 7:30 that I'm walking in, about dinner time. The sign on the door says they are open till 10, and with restaurant / tavern, of course, that's a reasonable time. This was last year, so I think this was either early in COVID, as I recall. So not everything was shut down, and they were certainly still open. So I'm walking up to the door. I hear people talking inside. I open the door, and then it's just dead silent. And I knew I had to go to the ATM, and the eyes and heads followed me. Went to the ATM. I sit down, and I was like, well, I got to get the Wop Chop, obviously. And she's like, well, it's going to have to be to go. We're closing in 10 minutes. And I was like, it's 7:30. What's it? Not even.
They closed at 7:40. What?
Yeah, an odd time to 7:40. So I get
or
my
was it
food.
just they're closed for your kind?
Yeah, I think they recognize that I'm not from around these parts. So I get my food. I leave. I end up eating in a hotel, but right when I get to my truck, I have a phone call, work phone call, and then I was on the phone for 30 minutes, and it occurs to me because I was parked right in front of the door, nobody left in that time.
Yeah,
was
nobody left. How did I know? How did I know?
So yeah, they're just not open for my kind, and that's not a race thing. It's just I'm obviously not a Butte person.
This is it's almost like that cantina scene in Star Wars.
It felt exactly
Almost
like
like
that. Like when I walked in, I'm like, well, I'm dedicated. I'm committed now. It
We're in, man. There's no going back.
But there's no backup. Trying to remember who I told where I was going to go eat in case I go missing. But the Wop Chop
I
was
have to
very
stand
good.
tall and establish dominance.
Exactly. You can't back down. They smell fear. Freeway Tavern also worth the trip.
All I'm going to say, Jimmy, is that this whole story reminds me of the haircut. That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
That is a tale for another time. My Spanish has since improved.
Yes, it is.
But
oh, it's improved since then.
yes, it has.
Did you get a Rosetta Stone thing? Just start practicing.
Well, let's move on to the right-wing coup that's in our house. This is local Montana news.
Again?
That's exactly the point I was making here. As the Montana Free Press, they come out with these, and we have sort of taken the bait and followed them and reported on the same thing, just our own research. But with them, they had a similar story last year about how there's infighting, and last year there was I guess a core group of Republicans that were taking over the Republican Party, and there was reports from these Montana Free Press folks about how they're crashing they crashed the Republican dinner party that wasn't supposed to happen because they're not allowed to do that outside of the house.
Naughty.
But either our house, which is mostly overturned. I mean, it's the different people than it was 3 years ago. That's the point of a citizens' legislature that we have. Are apparently doing the same thing. So I'm wondering if the Montana Free Press is just reporting what they want to see here. Not to say that there isn't some infighting, because certainly there's a lot of that, but Montana Republicans have a way of getting things done.
Well, I think it's entirely possible because right now I think especially at a national level, but it wouldn't surprise me at a state level if this is happening too, because Montana actually in the 2020 cycle has the distinction of being the only state where the governor flipped. So we lost the Democrat governor. We're picking up a Republican governor, and the struggle that you're really seeing right now is populism versus establishmentarianism. Like him or hate him, Trump had a lot of coattails,
and a lot of them in Montana. So
yeah, especially I think that's probably like the big thing because Montana was really weird. If you look at it, if you think back to the 2018 midterm election, Tester was up for re-election, and Tester had been a big thorn in Trump's side, and Trump and Pence both made it an objective to try and get Tester lose his election, and they failed. It didn't work. Tester, I don't remember what the margin was, but I think it was a decent margin there. Tester pretty easily won his next. And then you have Trump, close, and then you have the Republican wave come through here in the state, and then now all of a sudden Gianforte has taken the office.
Greg the Body back in action.
So I mean,
it is a populist thing. Our voter turnout was insane this time, and Montana voted overwhelmingly. Well, aside from a few outliers like Missoula, it's Republican red state across the board. So
it really is. It's at a more macro level. That's going to be very interesting. Like it's going to be really interesting to see in 2 years, not 4, in 2 years, what our national politics as well as some of our state level stuff looks like in 2 years when Trump is not on the ticket. Because the big argument that is being made at the national level on the right is that the National Republican Party wants absolutely nothing to do with Trump. In fact, they want to push him off the ledge because they don't like his populism. He won the presidency the first time he ran for it. He was not an established political figure beforehand, and all of a sudden now he's got this rising wave of populism, and with it is bringing huge coattails. holding Republican seats. He's gaining at state levels and all this kind of thing. And now the real question is what's going to happen in 2 years when he is not on the ticket and presumably back in private life?
Well, establishment Republicans are trying to thwart him all they can, apparently. Mitch McConnell is going against Trump's idea about the $2,000 check, which I'm for, by the way. It's a terrible idea. And the last check was a terrible idea, but I was for that too. Cheaply bought.
I know you kind of take more of the left position right now, and it might shock a lot of people as kind of me as the more right position. And
Color me shocked.
I know this is. I know I've been asked this question before by some of our mutual friends who are of the leftist persuasion. And when they ask me, do you think the government should be paying people like these checks? And I say, as long as the government is saying you can't work, and you are not allowed to work, they should be doing this. These industries can't work, or you can't work, or you can't do this, you can't do that. Then it is upon it, regardless of the circumstances, it is incumbent upon the government fund people who are not allowed to work right now, or who would be,
if that's who are explicitly and only the money was for. Me and you have not. I mean, this has been a great year for the podcast. Doing great. It's paying bills every day. We can afford not a Behringer mixer. Finally, things are looking
I was going
up.
to say, it's finally paid dividends. You can move away from one Behringer.
Yes, things are looking up, and I know your year has been pretty good as well. And so people like me and you don't need that money, don't deserve that money, but I'm sure still taking it. I mean,
well, I look at it this way: my wife can't work at any point in time. And especially with the musings of what's coming, or of the presumably the Biden administration.
He says max for 100 days, and that's the only real thing he said about it. But I think we're all going to get the vaccine.
Biden has said,
and regardless of how
he wants to listen to his advisors and the scientists and the people that have been picked to be his advisors are saying 6-week lockdown. So
that's what they say, but I have a strong feeling that
you're right.
The vaccine is here, and regardless of how effective it is, I think we're just going to sweep it under the rug.
The point that I'm trying to get at, the ultimate point that I'm trying to get at, is that we made the decision right now. She can stay unemployed right now. She's not drawing unemployment or anything. And when these mandates are lifted, and we're not under the threat of, okay, the schools are going to be closing down because they can't get enough substitute teachers because they're all the teachers are being told to stay home because of contact tracing, then she can get back into the workforce.
All right, makes logical
sense.
That's
our situation right now.
What is our next topic on here? Something about nuclear. Let's move on to white Indians.
Yeah.
So there's a documentary that was showcasing the epidemic of missing women in Montana, but it conveniently stumbled and made them all white when the epidemic of missing and trafficked, and specifically for indigenous people. It's not white people that are going missing here. And
I'm actually trying to bring up that article right now. Apparently, I grabbed the wrong one here. Oh, wait, are you talking about this ABC News article?
Yep, ABC News about Big Sky.
So the lead on this says, after ABC's Big Sky drew Native Americans censure for overlooking an epidemic of violence against indigenous women and girls, its producers set about making changes, but first, hurried steps were called bumpy and insulting by Native leaders. The reaction illustrates how well-meaning creators may struggle with growing demands for diversity and authenticity, especially with an ethnic group that Hollywood has at best ignored and at worst stereotyped beyond recognition. So are they saying that when they went to do this documentary, it was mainly whites that they interviewed and such?
But they used white actresses, and they claimed they based it off of a book called The Highway from 2013, which did not mention natives, is what they say. But they're... if you watch the trailers, if you and watch any clips of it, it's very obviously describing the epidemic here in Montana of missing and endangered and trafficked indigenous women.
It's basically exactly that. It is a very serious problem that's going on out here, and that's not even worth joking about.
Well, I didn't have any jokes on this segment.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just
pointing out.
I'm playing off the layup.
You're right. Hollywood stereotypes. Brown women don't sell unless you're actually buying them. So
Yeah.
Not a joke there.
Whoa!
The numbers don't lie. They are per capita the highest, most likely to be have violence struck against them, and also most likely to be involved or victims of human trafficking. So I say that very bluntly, but that's the truth.
Okay, I wanted you to spell that out there because I just didn't want that statement to end right there. Look,
speaking of missing and endangered Indigenous, women, and part of the issue is jurisdiction on the reservations, which is my next bullet point here.
No, that's not part of this here. I guess my take on this one is I understand the criticism. I'm not saying that it is wrong. I guess I would want to know a little bit more. I mean, like, was there? I think the criticism is legitimate, especially if you're making a thing about Native Americans and the abuse that the lawlessness and stuff like that that's going on there. I think it would behave you to. I think it would put an air of authenticity to at least have somebody who is of that background in there. But I mean, I hate the accusation that they like deliberately said, no, we're not going to get people, we're not going to get Native, Indigenous people into this film. We want to put we're only going to put white people in there.
Another problem I understand the business
that
decision to do so. There's not really Native actresses or actors that work in a non-stereotypical way. Like the most accurate show that portrays Indians as they might actually, as real people, is actually Letterkenny. Hilarious show, by the way. You got to watch it. Tanis is never mind. I'm plugging Letterkenny. It's Canadian. Damn Canadians. Mm-hmm. We're building the wall on the wrong border. But subject for another time. But anywhere else, they're either not existent. They're an Indian, like a cowboy Indian, or they're
in the video game world. Here's an interesting fact. Do you know the actor Jay Tavar? His last name is Tavare.
I do not.
While you were talking here, I was trying to get it confirmed that he is actually Native American. I believe that he is. But he actually played Vega in the Street Fighter movie. He was brought on to voice act a character by the name of Code Talker on Metal Gear Solid 5, who was an old Native American, and he spoke Dene that
is really cool.
He learned, if I remember him correctly, I think this was on one of his Twitter posts, actually researched his ancestry and learned to speak the old tongue so that he could actually fulfill parts of that role. He spoke both languages during or in that game. It was really cool. I thought it lent a lot of authenticity to it, and I love it when stuff like that is done to bring an era of authenticity to it. And you can see them on screen, you can hear them, and it becomes part of your psyche. It's part of that natural blending that I like to see in good storytelling.
Well, I think there's space, like when you're telling something specifically affecting Native Americans, I think there's space to actually have Native Americans or maybe even somebody that looks Native American in that narrative that you're displaying.
Agreed.
But I also think, and this is where Hollywood and all of our stories are falling short, that there is room for Native Americans as regular people in our narrative because they are just that. I mean, people you see in everyday life. A Native American doesn't have to be in your TV show for the sake of acting like a stereotypical Native. That's reinforcing a stereotype. So I think there's room for that as well. And I had the same gripe about Mexicans about 20 years ago. Hollywood's gotten better about it recently, usually.
Right.
So, although there's still plenty of that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
The Simpsons got rid of Apu, but the Mexican Bumblebee guy is still there. So there's still some of that.
I'm not touching that, or I'm going to get in big trouble. But I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
When we're talking about missing indigenous, part of the issue is jurisdiction on the tribe. I was thinking to the story, was it outside of Hardin, where that gal went missing and she was found near the rest area where she had went missing, like within a mile of it.
Yeah.
Took them.
Yeah.
But I think like 2 weeks to find her. This was the middle of winter, so
yeah,
unfortunately,
it was gonna take a while.
I can't remember her name off the top of my head, which is shameful. But there's so many of them that you really can't. But with that one, part of the issue was there was an initial delay in actually searching for her. It was reported to tribal police at first because she is a tribal member, and then they don't have authority to search or do stuff off the reservation where she was likely missing. And that comes under the authority of the federal, usually FBI in this case, or BIA also sometimes has police force. I think that was Hardin, so they do have their own police force, which we're getting into here because the Crows are taking this matter to the Supreme Court. Because, as I mentioned, tribal police do not have authority off the reservation, of course, but also they do not have authority on the reservation for non-native members. The Crows are taking this up to the Supreme Court. I think it's the 9th District affirmed the opinion that they do not have that authority over non-Indians.
So
specifically
let's
in case of meth
let's take
that
a
they
step
found.
back here. Let's get everybody up to speed on this one here, though. The article that we're looking at here is from MontanaFreePress.org, and it says here
those guys again.
This whole controversy, it centers around the controversy of United States v. Cooley, which centers on the detainment of a non-Indian and evidence, which includes guns and about 260 grams of meth, gathered by a tribal police officer from a truck stopped on the shoulder of a U.S. highway traversing the Crow Reservation in south central Montana. The Supreme Court, which agreed late last month to hear the case, will decide whether lower courts erred in disallowing that evidence on the determination that a tribal police officer lacked authority to temporarily detain and search a non-Indian on a public right-of-way within a reservation. While the question before the court is a narrow one, its ruling could have a major impact on how tribal police officers perform their jobs. The case eventually reached the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which denied the government's appeal in 2019 because the government wanted the evidence in, and they were not allowed, and they were not allowed to do so, ruling that the tribal police officer's ability to detain or search non-Indians depends on the existence of what's called quote obvious or quote apparent violations of state or federal law, which is a stricter standard than the reasonable suspicion standard that non-tribal officers operate under. The court said the tribal officer can stop suspects on public rights of way, so they do have the ability to pull you over, but they must determine then whether the suspect is Indian or not, and if they are not, the officer can then detain them only if they observe an obvious or apparent violation of the law.
Well, that's a pretty narrow definition, but I am of the opinion that tribal police officers should have absolute police authority on the reservation. It just blows my mind that that's not the case, and I don't think that a lot of people know that, unfortunately. That's
very asinine. Let me see here.
You have me erring on the side of cops here is how backwards this is. That usually doesn't happen in my ACAB vocabulary.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which is true. Even I, as a career criminal, as I am, can see how
in Minecraft,
and can see how limiting and damaging this is, especially in cases where outside of tribal law enforcement, there may not be actually non-tribal law enforcement on the reservations, because typically the BIA and the FBI are only serving as a police force in the event of a tribe's failure to provide a police force. Often don't exist side by side, and certainly the reservations are huge. Just think of the area outside of Hardin, that's hundreds of square miles. Any police force is going to be stretched very thin there, let alone trying to duplicate police forces for different ethnicities of people. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, and
imagine going to Canada and telling the Mounties they can't pull you over.
You mentioned ethnicity. You mentioned ethnicity, right? Sorry to talk you over there. Go ahead and finish your point there. I think I got a more salient one there to add to it, though.
Absolutely.
And my point that I was going to make is that it's funny because especially over the last few months, you would actually be kind of surprised how my opinion of law enforcement has changed. But one of the biggest challenges that they face is that if you have law enforcement personnel who are not from the area, right, you wind up it makes their job especially harder because they're very much seen as an outsider force. So if now all of a sudden you have if the tribal nations have to be patrolled by state agencies or like the FBI or something like that are being patrolled by people from not even necessarily in the same state at all. So they have no ties to the community. Like I really see this getting really bad to the point where people were like, if there's a major issue with an officer, they just shuffle him around, to another state and bring another one in, because again, it's all federal.
at that point in time.
You are right. I'll make a quick. I'm going to argue with myself and make a quick counterpoint. Yeah. A lot of the BIA officers I know are native and are specifically attracted to that role to fulfill, to address that same problem you're talking about, sort of as a local.
Yeah, they want to genuinely help their tribe.
You have been listening to this cast for a while, because this is a point going back. Oh, geez, over a year, back when Black Lives was really kicking up. By the way, Black Lives sticker right here in the Montana Voices footlocker. I was making that point that when police are policing poor communities, even in Montana, the wage for a police officer, like Great Falls, I think, was just under $50,000, which is a decent middle class life. But
yeah, when it's about that rate for a first year officer, I think.
But when you have a normal wage and you're bringing in people to provide for law enforcement into a very impoverished region where the median wage might be under 10,000 or might be nothing pretty much, these people are not of that community, even though they might live nearby. It's a different class, and so that is a area of policing that I'm not sure how we solve.
They don't have family or ties to the community. Like, their kids don't go to the schools. Their parents don't live in the same neighborhood or something like that. They don't have, or their brothers and sisters don't work
it's
at
cops from the suburbs enforcing
the
rule in the inner city. It's a different area entirely, obviously a different world almost.
Oof. I would hope. Final note here: the case history on this one. It started in 2016 when a tribal police officer on the Crow Reservation pulled up behind a truck, stopped alongside U.S. Highway 212 at about 1 a.m. Inside the truck was Joshua James Cooley, a child, drugs, guns, and cash. So, according to the government's request that the Supreme Court hear the case. So, after noticing that rifles were in the vehicle, that he had weapons in the car, Cooley had slurred speech and a gun in his hand. The officer asked Cooley to leave the vehicle and then searched it, finding the meth and other items associated with drug trafficking. So
how
Cooley,
was that obvious reasonable suspicion?
Was detained by the tribal officer and later arrested by a county officer.
I don't understand how that's not obvious reasonable suspicion right there. I mean,
okay, so there's two different elements of this thing here, right? So if we go back to the standard of obvious or apparent, and again, I'm not a lawyer, not legal advice, all that kind of stuff, but just my layman's interpretation. The officer observes he has slurred speech and he has a gun in his hand, right? Okay, so that right there, those are the obvious and apparent things. The drugs and everything else were not observed until he actually searched the vehicle. Now, if Cooley was an Indian, that's reasonable suspicion. I feel pretty confident saying just about any police officer would say, yeah, I'm going to search the vehicle. It's obvious he's driving drunk. He's endangering the life of a child back here. I want to see what else this guy has got. What else is he getting involved in? But Cooley was charged in U.S. District Court with possession of meth with intent to distribute and possession of a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. His attorney successfully sought to have the gathered evidence suppressed on the grounds that the tribal officer lacked jurisdiction in that location over Cooley, who was a non-Indian. So that's where this whole thing is coming back. And because he's a non-Indian, the argument is, did the officer essentially have jurisdiction over him?
That's one of the most common blunders that criminals make. If you're doing crime, just do one crime at a time. I mean,
it kind of is. It really is. Well, what is it? When they went after Capone, they got him on taxes, not actual alcohol distribution shit.
Do I have my ducks in a row here? So the Ninth Court says the evidence should be thrown out, but the federal government, is challenging this up to the Supreme Court. You have still.
Yeah, I'm reading. I'm reading this here. So Cooley's lawyer said you can't admit this evidence because the tribal officer had no jurisdiction. And this comes into play because the tribal officer did the search.
Right.
That's a real issue here. If a Montana State Patrol officer or somebody else from the county did the search, then all of this would definitely be admissible in court. The issue is the fact that the tribal officer did the search and came up with all this here. I'm surprised they actually discarded the evidence, because to me, I would almost want to look at the case file and see what the actual, or look at the pleadings and see what the actual argument was here, because it's to me, from a layman's perspective, it's apparent and obvious that he was drunk driving. He had slurred speech. And combine that with the fact that he had open firearms in his vehicle
and in his hand.
Now, in his hand, he had a gun in his hand. I'm genuinely surprised the guy is still alive. I mean, I can only imagine what the officer was thinking when he pulled and again he also had a child in the back of his vehicle. Where obviously what they're saying here, where the officer went wrong is that went in and searched the vehicle after detaining Cooley is essentially what happened here.
That all seems reasonable to me. So
yeah. What's that?
That seems reasonable to me that's what would happen. And I can't imagine the thing I was talking about earlier where this is a huge area and we're doubling up a police force. I imagine highway patrol resources weren't available at that time. And if that search wasn't conducted, this guy might have been able to drive away.
That would be the effect of this. Let's say that the Supreme Court rules that grants cert and allows this to stand. Then that tells us, or then that basically means that you're going to have multiple law enforcement agencies at multiple different levels specifically to handle the tribes. Well, so that means that
in our
case,
that.
Montana State Patrol is going to have more officers, and they're going to have to be assigned specifically to handle all this. And like they make another argument here in this article that the officers don't want to be put in a situation where they have to wait for the state to show up on a domestic on a domestic violence situation, which would be the effect as potentially of a ruling in the favor of the defendant on this one.
That is the system as it stands right now. That is the status quo on the reservations. So, as I pointed out earlier with my speeding, allegedly, to be charged with the crime of speeding, we both would have to sit there and wait for a non-tribal officer to come and issue that citation.
And then there could be an argument made that does he even have the authority to detain you if all you were doing was like speeding?
As I understand, it's one small step above citizen's arrest, as I understand, which should change within the borders of a reservation, in my opinion. Makes sense to me. Should go to whatever local authority, whether that be the tribal police or the BIA or the FBI, whichever one it is. So, but to the Supreme Court, which unfortunately does not have the best record in dealing with tribal affairs, and the Supreme Court once legalized slavery repeatedly. I don't know if you remember. So the Supreme Court is not always right in history or with themselves.
And that's one of the arguments that like this all ties, or that some of the lawyers I listen to have said is that you never want these things to go to the Supreme Court or really any court if you can avoid it, because you don't know how the judge is going to rule. You have no guarantee that you're going to get the outcome that you want. You may get all, you may get some, you may get nothing of what you want on this one here. So the article here kind of closes up by saying, quote, a Supreme Court affirmation of the ruling would be especially felt by tribes attempting to address the problem of missing and murdered indigenous people. For example, the Fort Peck, Assiniboine, and Sioux tribes, which joined that brief, they've joined the brief saying that they want the Supreme Court to overturn their ruling and to allow that evidence to be admitted, because the Assiniboine and Sioux tribes have started to prosecute non-Indians for domestic violence incidents against Native Americans. That has been allowed since the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act in 2013, but could be complicated if the Ninth Circuit ruling stands. So that's another really good point right there. So let's say you have a non-Indian and a native, or a non-indigenous and an indigenous person in a dwelling, and there's a report of a domestic. What do you do?
Well, if you're in Sioux land, apparently you're going to get arrested. So, but that might be the exception.
But I mean, it's another example of those things that is essentially like law enforcement is going to need like a flow chart that says, okay, and they have to factor in essentially race. It's like if you're this race and you're not that race or this or that.
Well, there's a reason.
That's wrong. That's wrong, and I do not want any officer put in that situation. Because,
a quick clarification:
when you're dealing with serious things like you were just talking earlier about how human trafficking is a huge problem. I'm like,
could you imagine if an officer if an indigenous person was kidnapped, and they start gathering the description, and they said, and the suspect is non-indigenous? Well, now the tribal officer's got to go, whoa, hold on, I got to get the FBI in here. We got to wait.
That's what happens now, and this is why this slips through the cracks. I mean, the FBI is not... The authority falls to the FBI usually when it's a missing indigenous woman or person. But as far as how quickly the FBI reacts and with what veracity they react, it's kind of whatever, if there's somebody in the region, I guess, which there not always is. So it falls through the cracks all the time, and it's been cited time and time again that we all know the first 48 are the most important, but if action can't be taken in that first 48, for example, with that gal that froze to death outside of the rest area was not on the reservation. The tribal police who were investigating her disappearance did not have authority to go there. Eventually the tribe went there just on their own volition with little support from the state police.
We're going.
Well, yes, and they found her eventually. It was I think the Hardin sheriff deputy that did it. That's we covered that a while ago. It was bringing back painful memories to report on it again. But that's exactly what happened. I'm not sure if the outcome in that specific situation would have changed, but you can certainly see how a missing indigenous person could simply fall through the cracks of whose jurisdiction it is. Are they missing on the reservation? Are they missing off the reservation? Who has the authority to investigate this? And oftentimes that means the buck kind of gets passed to somebody else. Because, I mean, a tribal police force it certainly has limited resources for a small tribe. Say 10,000. Think of a town of 10,000 people and the size of that police force, and think of that spread out over hundreds of miles. That's the police force that's getting thinned out like that. So that is the status quo right now. That's I think one of the biggest factors contributing to the epidemic of missing indigenous people.
I personally hope that they overturn this ruling and allow the admission of that kind of evidence there. I think the issue here really needs to be addressed through legislation. I don't want there to be a patchwork of court rulings that essentially establish like two different standards here, or different standards for this or different standards for that. Because that's my big concern is that the Supreme Court could, I mean, they've already granted cert, so they've given permission to the government to file their appeal. I just don't want the government I don't want there to be a ruling that says, well, if it's involving something that is like life and death, then there's a different standard applied to this thing. I'd rather, just like you said, if you cross into tribal lands, you need to follow tribal law, and if you break that law, a tribal officer can detain you, Jimmy. They can detain you.
Am I being detained? Well, there are a lot of people that would not like to see this go through. There are active parties, specifically on the reservation to the north of me, on the Flathead Reservation. There is a group of non-tribal members, maybe the least tribal reservation. I think 60% of the people on that reservation are white, and they're rich whites because it's all resort towns and lake houses.
I think it would probably be better to say that they're non-indigenous people there. They're just people.
That takes me back.
They're just living on the lands.
You're right. That takes me back to a point I was going to make, but then you kept on going. We're not talking about the ethnicity. We're talking about tribal enrollment status specifically, because ethnicity doesn't guarantee you or eliminate you from the tribe either way, and things like blood quantum are designed to actually decrease the tribes. So not ethnicity, actual something that's a document, an ID. But there's actual forces up that people have been telling me about, and I haven't seen any solid reporting. So I'm sort of been picking up pieces from these small groups that are having gatherings that are actually non-tribal members that are renting out convention centers in Kalispell to see how they can erode tribal sovereignty on the reservation that they choose to have a lake house on half the year, which is
how generous of them.
Yeah, which is just madness. And I honestly think the tribe doesn't have enough authority over them. The tribe can't tax them on that land. So if you own a lake house, those taxes go to the state of Montana, are extracted, and supposedly come back to them for whatever grants or whatever. I don't know exactly how the state budget works.
Do.
Exactly. Sure they do. State and federal taxes still apply, but no tribal taxes. And in that situation, I don't think the money comes back one for one. They that's another myth. Indians don't pay taxes. Absolutely do. Depending on the tribe.
So, anyways, you were saying that they were making an argument against trying to overturn the ruling.
Overturn the ruling. I'm not sure if they picked up on this exact ruling. This is pretty hot off the press, but they are opposed to any tribal sovereignty matters, such as the Salish Kootenai tribes getting they now are under authority to manage the National Bison Range, which is land that was ceded to them per the treaty of 1860 something. But then the government decided they wanted that land back in 1908, and that there was a court case 60 years after that, in which it was affirmed that the government was in the wrong and that the land belonged to the tribe. And it's another 60 years until they actually get it back. So slow progress is being made. Speaking of slow progress, Supreme Court, slow progress, court going up to the Supreme Court, which, I don't know, it's a new Supreme Court. We have, 3 new Trump-appointed justices, right? We got that new gal, then that rapist guy, and then... or allegedly. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, hold on here.
Supposedly.
Yeah, he denies all allegations, good sir.
Of course. Kavanaugh and that other... Oh, I forget.
Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett.
So it's a very different court, and they have not been tested yet on native matters since these 3 new justices have been appointed. But everybody's the left's hero, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, did not have the best track record in dealing with the tribes or on legal matters in this. In fact, she wrote the dissenting opinion for it was a New York tribe that very similar to how the Salish lost the National Bison Range. The government just decided they wanted it back and took it. I forget which tribe exactly it was out of New York, but a lot of land was given out through allotment, basically literally taking from them after, of course, their mainland was taken. But after they were on the reservation, parts of that land were taken and checkerboard, sold, or given away to whomever for whatever reason. So, come 100 years later, the tribe starts buying back land that was taken but never actually ceded or deeded to anybody any different, just basically taken from them. And so they bought the land back, and then the court ruling, they tried to challenge their responsibility for paying taxes, because the tribe doesn't pay taxes to the non-tribal entities within the reservation, basically. So they said, this is our land, it was in the treaty, we own it now. They actually bought it back in the open market. We shouldn't have to pay taxes on this. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the opinion stating that this is opening the wounds that are long settled, and saying that this was old news and we don't want to rekindle these ashes, basically, was their verbiage. Which is weird, because something like the National Bison Range that recently, this is in that last $600 stimulus and budget bill, that's how fresh this is. That doesn't sound like ashes or even embers. That sounds like this is an issue that's still not settled. So for her to say that, and there were other smaller cases, but that was the big one where she pointed out that they basically don't have authority over their own land that was treated, which is interesting. It's a one-sided treaty, and then the government decides later that, there's gold in the hills. Yeah, we didn't mean those hills. Those are our hills. So, anywho,
you mentioned it. You mentioned it before. I think you were talking about Canada and their wall.
Yeah, we got to keep them out with their sweaters and their A's. The feral pigs are coming. I was promised feral pigs. I thought they'd be here by now.
Whoa, really? Feral pigs?
Yeah, feral pigs coming down from Canada. But I know, I was excited. Apparently, they're terrible for crops, for land. They
are, dude.
I mean, what are you going to do if 30 to 50 feral pigs show up on your land?
Yeah, if you don't have a gun, you hide.
So that was sort of made into a meme joke. What's the 30 to 50 feral pigs?
Something like that.
Something like that. But
I think it was like the AR-15 argument or something like that.
Yes, I recall. But feral pigs are a real threat, especially since they're coming from Canada.
Oh yeah, they are. Well, and not only that. I mean, if you look at Georgia, it's a very big problem down there in Georgia. Huge problem down there.
Oh well, it's our future here. I mean, who knows what to do with the crops? Who knows, or livestock, or even natural animal life here? But
dude, how amazing would it be if we solve the whole wolf issue, eating cattle, if the wolves just turn around and ate the pigs.
That is an interesting ordeal. We covered that in a previous cast. Montana pays farmers for their cattle that are eaten by wolves.
Yeah, well, that's because it was part of a program to reintroduce the wolves into the Montana wilderness, and that was a huge concern brought up by the farmers. Was, look, you let the wolves out here, man, they're gonna eat my cattle. They're gonna do it.
They do. They absolutely do. And Montana paid several $1 million out just last year for that.
No shit.
Yeah. So wolves are out wolving. But, well, I that's all I had in the docket here, unless there's something you want to add. Or
yeah,
Chris, you really pulled it out of me.
I was looking at the clock myself. We just go on, dude. It's okay. It's quite okay.
So I've really enjoyed our chats here. Again, you are definitely driving viewership, it feels like. I have numbers or something.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh,
I don't get to talk to you guys a lot, so it's actually very nice to, if nothing else, just be able to throw inside jokes at people again.
All right. Well, for those that don't know, many years ago, me and Chris and Bryce all worked for the same place. That's no longer the case.
Yeah.
People move on, but so we're nostalgic for a much different time in our lives. Oh, we're all in our 20s or so.
No kidding.
Such a long time ago.
No kidding, man.
Party
it feels
time.
like it. I tell you what. A year doing what I'm doing now, it really does feel like 5.
It actually. I met you over 10 years ago, so it was well over 10 years ago, wasn't it? Jeez. Well, let's put this one in the books. Montana Voices podcast, available wherever fine podcasts are sold, except Spotify. One exception, we do have a Twitch. Maybe I should upload something to there eventually. Gmail, montanavoices@gmail.com. Of course, we're on Twitter, @Montana Voices. We're on YouTube. We also, Montana, I think, _voices there. I don't have a listen for... Damn it, Bryce usually does this. Or there's a recording. But... So, thank you for the wild ride that has been episode 46, or goodbye 45.